to have him on if he's calling in. Senator Kaine.
Hey, Gene Rossi, how are you this fine Saturday?
Oh, I'm doing well. I'm talking to you.
Well, I am glad to hear your voice, and I have already been out doing one big canvas kickoff in Richmond for candidates in Henrico, General Assembly and Board of Supervisors and School Board candidates, and I have a couple more today, so it's a beautiful day to be out campaigning, and I'm glad to check in.
Oh, well, Senator, I'm not going to go through your background again, but I just want to start off with a couple of key issues, and one of them, because you're so experienced in this area, is Syria. Could you just give us your thoughts on the president's decision regarding the Kurds and Turkey and Syria?
Well, Gene, it is. This is a real difficult situation, admittedly, for the world. But I think the president has made a massive, massive mistake by turning his back on the Kurds. When the United States decided in 2014 that we needed to engage to defeat the Kurds, to defeat ISIS, who was running rampant all across the region, we have had no better partner in that effort than the Kurds. Others have been allies, but the Kurds have really been the strongest battlefield ally that the U.S. has had in the effort, first by the Obama and then by the Trump administrations, to defeat ISIS. The military has been telling President Trump for a long time, if you pull U.S. troops out, two things are going to happen. ISIS will come back, and the Kurds will face being slaughtered by Turks coming across the border. The Turkish government has been anti-Kurd for a very, very long time. Despite all of that warning to the president, we can't abandon these allies who helped us defeat ISIS because, A, it would be wrong, and B, it will lead to ISIS coming back. The president decided to do it anyway. And what that's going to mean is first, we will likely face a resurgent ISIS. And second, if we abandon these battlefield allies, it's going to make future allies very reticent about partnering with the United States in important military missions because they'll believe that the U.S. won't be there for them at the end. And so I am extremely disappointed. And then you look at what's likely to happen. What Turkey wants to do is they've indicated that they're clearing out this space in northern Syria, which is Kurdish land, Kurdish communities, and then they're going to try to resettle millions of Syrian refugees from Turkey back into this space. And these are mostly people who aren't Kurds. And so the idea is they're going to push people onto Kurdish land as a way of pushing Kurds out. That's ethnic cleansing. And the president has even used language that would suggest, we need to clean it out. Doing this saved the Turks from having to kill millions of people. So now it's not just that we abandon battlefield allies, but we're enabling what will likely be ethnic cleansing in northern Syria, and that's not something the U.S. should ever do.
Well, Senator, I think President Trump yesterday said that maybe it was Thursday night at a rally, that the Turkey and the Kurds are like two little kids fighting, and it's kind of good to let them fight, and then the United States will come in and break it up, and that'll be, nirvana. Could you explain to the listeners how that's really not a practical approach or solution?
Yeah, it just shows that the president does not understand this situation. First, in stating it that way, the president shows no appreciation for the fact that the Kurds were fighting side by side with American troops. Virginia is a pro-military state. I've got a child in the military. I'm on the Armed Services Committee. I understand the way our military leadership thinks about these things. When you are fighting side by side with an ally on the battlefield, you don't want to leave them behind. And the fact that Trump sort of, all right, who cares? They have this fight. It's their fight. We don't need to worry about it overly much, completely misses the point that at a time when the world needed somebody to stand up against ISIS, the U.S. did, and so did the Kurds. Again, there were other allies who did, but nobody did what the U.S. did, and nobody did what the Kurds did to defeat ISIS. And so I found the statement very, very offensive. And then second, the idea of, let them fight, this is going to create chaos on the border. In this fighting and chaos, you've already seen ISIS prisoners, dangerous people, released, ISIS supporters released. They are likely to create havoc wherever they go. And so the notion is, just let them have this little fight over here, and it's not going to affect us. The president's wrong. And that's what his military leadership has been telling him for a very long time. As you know, Gene, when the president started to suggest we would do this a year ago and abandon our Kurdish allies, that led Secretary Mattis, who is one of the finest public servants that I've ever worked with, the defense secretary, to resign because he felt like he could not tolerate abandoning an ally, especially when it meant that ISIS would likely reconstitute and cause harm to the U.S. and to others.
Senator, I know you're limited in what you can say about the process, but can you shed any light on the whole impeachment process that is occurring on the House side, and if you're able to shed any light on the Senate, if you're able to?
Yeah, Gene, I can. I'll share what I can. As you know, an impeachment process, essentially the House acts like a grand jury in a way. They come up with if they decide to move forward, they come up with articles of impeachment, which is sort of like an indictment. And if by simple majority they vote on an article or multiple articles of impeachment, it then comes to the Senate where there's a trial, and the senators are jurors, and at the end of a trial, if there is one, we either vote to convict or acquit on each article of impeachment that gets sent to us. So the process is on the House side, and it's underway. I'll say this about what the House is doing. It's necessary, it's deadly serious, and it's unpredictable. So necessary. President Trump got in the Mueller report about as clear a warning as anybody could ever get. There's right and there's wrong. The Mueller report said, look, you cannot cooperate with a foreign government to undermine an American election. With respect to the 2016 election, the report looked at candidate Trump, who was not president, and said, you encouraged Russia to interfere. Russia did interfere. But while there was some contact between your team and Russia, we can't find coordination of the kind that would make your behavior unlawful. But the report clearly indicated that you cannot coordinate with a foreign nation to try to affect an American election. Within a day of that report being out, the Trump administration was doing exactly what the report said you can't do. And now it's not candidate Trump. Now it's President Trump. President Trump using inappropriately congressionally mandated support for the Ukrainian military and saying, well, we're going to hold this back if you don't pursue this weirdly conspiratorial theory about a DNC server, if you don't go after Joe Biden. So it was necessary. When the president got a warning about what was right and what was wrong and decided, I don't care, the rules don't apply to me, I'm going to do it anyway, the House had to move forward. It's deadly serious. The framers of the Constitution, in terms of what they were worried about with an executive, they were worried about foreign interference. And so the House is looking at foreign interference. The House is looking at obstruction of justice. They're going to look at using a personal office to pad your own pocket rather than help the country. All of these issues are things that the House will look at. But the last point is the important one. It's very unpredictable. Gene, I'm on the Armed Services and Foreign Relations Committee, and I know a lot, including from going to a lot of classified hearings. But I've learned things in the last 10 days from the testimony of some of these State Department witnesses that I didn't know. I didn't realize that Rudy Giuliani was being deputized as like a private Secretary of State to work with others to run Ukraine policy instead of Secretary Pompeo and the ambassador to Ukraine. I didn't realize there had been a whisper and smear campaign to kick out an able career State Department Foreign Service officer, the Ukrainian ambassador. There had been a smear campaign to kick her out. I wasn't aware of that. We knew she had left. We knew there were some questions that made it seem suspicious, but we didn't know exactly why. So the first level of unpredictability is some facts are going to come out that are going to be shocking, I believe. Second, when it gets to the Senate behavior is unpredictable. Republicans, most say, well, they won't vote to impeach President Trump. But President Trump is doing some things that are making Republicans very mad. Leader McConnell has an op-ed today in the paper trashing the president's decision about Syria. That's not directly relevant to the impeachment question, but when the president is making Republicans so mad, the majority of Republicans in the House voted to rebuke him over Syria, it starts to open up the possibility that Republicans might well be open